The Center for the Study of Hate and Extremism reports that anti-Asian hate crimes have grown by 200% in Philadelphia. So joining me this morning, we have Councilwoman Helen and Councilman at Large David O. Good morning to both of you, and thank you for talking to us this morning.
Good morning.
I would like to start with you, Councilwoman Gim, about your reaction to the news that happened, and also to tell us what the mood was at the vigil and the fact that the community came together yesterday.
The Asian American community, the Korean American community is grieving. We're in sorrow. There's a number of people who are in fear. But I think last night what we tried to show was a sense of solidarity, a unity, a sense of purpose in this moment, because we recognize that for many people this is the first time on a major platform that people are talking about anti-Asian violence, harassment that has been impacting the community, not only since March and the coronavirus epidemic, but actually for a number of years. And Philadelphia certainly has that history that we've been active in. And, it's really important for us to start recognizing what anti-Asian violence looks like, the tools of hate that are wielded, and then the forces that push back. I think all of us were angry about the county sheriff's remarks that said that the shooter was having a really bad day, or tried to associate the homicide of 6 Asian women as being skeptical about race, or about the fact that they were sources, even just to repeat it, just to say that they were sources of temptation, is deeply violating to a lot of us who've been subjected to this kind of violence in pop culture, on the streets, and now from law enforcement.
Oh, Councilman, it seems like yesterday and after this happened, like Councilwoman Gibbon was mentioning, so it's like something clicked. More people are, okay, I need to learn more about what's going on in different Asian communities and how they're being perceived. Do you also feel, because Stop Asian Hate was trending for a large part of yesterday, and it's still continuing this morning?
Yeah, I think one of the solutions to this type of problem, which actually has been long-standing in the United States of America, is education. A lot of people just don't know almost anything about the history of Asians in America. The Filipinos fighting in the War of 1812, the Civil War, World War I, World War II, the Civil Rights Movement, the Supreme Court cases that Asian Americans brought that are the foundation of many of our constitutional freedom. That's just pretty much lost on a lot of people. And the vilification and scapegoating of Asian Americans, which only makes up about 5.6% of the U.S. population, but over 65% of the world's population, has led to an underlying false basis of hatred that every now and then surges into physical acts of violence and aggression towards people of Asian American heritage and those who are immigrants from Asia. So education is critically important.
It certainly sounds like, as you mentioned, it hasn't started with the coronavirus pandemic, but we certainly have seen an increase recently. And I mentioned earlier that there's been a nearly 200% increase when it comes to just our area, Philadelphia. And Councilwoman Gim, can you talk about that, about the fact that we are seeing an increase? And even though it certainly didn't start last year, we are hearing about more incidents since March of 2020.
Sure. I mean, it's no surprise when a former president and sitting Congress members, sitting individuals, elected officials use language associating, the health epidemic with Asian Americans and then people nations overseas. It should be no surprise when media platforms give open rise to white supremacists, racists spewing these ideas, that this does not have a profound impact on people on the ground. This is in addition to the fact that we're in an economic freefall. And historically, what we've seen is that in times of economic disparity, inequality, and suffering, Asian Americans in particular and immigrants overall become convenient and likely scapegoats. I think one of the painful things here that we're seeing, and in incidents that I've heard from young people all the way up to our seniors, is that this isn't some kind of like fringe thing people who are attacking people on the street, a young woman that we are working with who was spit upon and shoved and, told to go back to her country, was a lawyer at a law firm. These are individuals who are, this isn't just a fringe element. This is actually ingrained into many parts of culture. It's part of, the fact that the women, it's no surprise that the women, for example, were murdered at a place that has long been disparaged, mocked, a place of pop culture references are to it. And many of us as Asian American women have often been told that's where we belong to. So this is not just some, 21-year-old, which is pretty shocking, who is the way he is out in Georgia. This is something that is happening on our streets. The hard thing for people to understand, like with other types of racism directed towards other individuals, is how do you take it out of its hyper individualized one-to-one context, which is traditionally how the laws look, harassment looks, other types of things, and how do you understand it as a societal ill, and then begin to tackle things from the outside in, as well as from incidences up on through. But we're not learning. And I think that's one of the key things that most Asian Americans here in Philadelphia and across the nation are angry about. We're not learning, we're not adapting. Both the laws, law enforcement, and others are not taking white supremacy seriously. They are not rooting it out. They're not going after the places where this chatter goes to see whether it's linked to other forms of violence. And we need folks to sit up, if you care in this moment, not to see things trend, but to actually make change.
Right.
Then
it's more than a hashtag.
To start educating ourselves.
It's more than just posting about it. And I'm grateful that you touched on, because I've been reading and seeing a lot about, when you say pop culture, the hypersexualization of Asian women and how people refer to them and how that kind of starts a whole chain. But there's so many things you've touched on there. I want to go to Councilman David O, because, like you mentioned, we need people to stand up, to say something. Of course, Commissioner Outlaw has said, hey, this is something that we're looking into. We want to support the Asian community. If someone's watching this and they're like, wow, I want to do something, I want to be a part of the change, what would you recommend that they do?
Well, I think the important thing is, one, to honestly look at the situation. Yeah, there's a problem with white supremacy, but there's also issues of Black on Asian hate, Black on Asian crime, Latino on Asian crime, and vice versa. There is a problem in our country of people not understanding and working with each other, not being tolerant of different views. However, what people are upset about shootings, assaults, and acts of violence and harassment, but yet many people retain the underlying reasons why that hatred emerges. And it's important for people to broaden their perspectives and not only hear one voice about what Asian American history is and who Asian Americans are. So take time to understand who the people are and check yourself on what you believe. No, we don't want Asian Americans attacked on the street, the elderly, the women, but yet we still believe that they're good in math, they have high income levels and graduation rates, and that they're greedy, selfish people. No, that's not correct. That's quite inaccurate. And one of the problems is the government promotes those things, those statistics that are commonly used in universities, corporations, foundations. Those are absolutely incorrect demographic information. And that has to be addressed. And might I say, here in Philadelphia, this city passed a law which targeted Chinese takeout restaurants to be forced to close at 11 p.m. and said it's not discriminatory. And for 14 years, they closed restaurants, fining them $2,000 per evening based on the fact of very false, negative stereotypes. When the government does that here in Philadelphia, what can we expect? The people in the community say, yes, that's right. These are bad places. Bad things happen at them. The people are bad. That has to be addressed. A lot of false narratives that are untouched.
And that's why it's important to have conversations like this. And unfortunately, we only get a couple of minutes to talk about it, but these are things you need to take the time to delve into. So I'm sure this won't be the last segment that we have to talk about these issues and to find out how we can address them to make this city, this country, safer and better for everyone who lives here. So thank you to both of you.
Thank you very much.
Okay, we're going to take a break.